grayscale, color scale. You may begin to see me do more of that at the very beginning. I need to do that to get my color correction from the start, mainly to get the blacks and the whites set, not so much the color. If you saw yesterday's video, you saw I used my little, I have a set of tiles. Let me find them here. Somewhere they are. In my pocket here somewhere. Where are they? Well, I did bring them, didn't I? Yes, I did. I also have a set of little tiles. The black, white, 18% gray, and a neutral gray. They're made by a company called Whitebal. Whibal.com. I'm not sure if they're still available or not. I've had these for a long time. I really like them. It's easy to set your color balance with this. I use them sometimes when I'm shooting a series of pictures in a still location and I want to make sure I get my white balance set. I use auto white balance in the camera of shooting raw because I know I can change it later. That's okay. But to be able to have something to set it on is really nice. The only place these really don't work well is when you get into an area like uptown Westerville where everything is lit with sodium vapor or mercury vapor lights and there is no blue. It's all orange and yellow and magenta. There's not a piece of blue spectrum anywhere in the light. And you can still balance, but it just kind of throws everything off. But this works really well. I've had these for a long time. Had this for a long time also. I carry a couple of those. There's one in my bag. There's one in a big case that I have. I'd like to get the small one. They make one that's about, I don't know, that big. Fits in your pocket. I just have no reason to. There's no reason to buy another piece of equipment when I've got equipment that works, especially if you want to balance on red. So that's part of my mantra is not buying something just because you can. I tend to use a lot of old equipment, not because I don't want new equipment. Believe me, there's stuff I would love to have. There are things I can do with new equipment that I can't do with some of my old equipment, but I'm not really that strong about going off and buying all new equipment when the old equipment works so well. Part of that philosophy leads me to a couple of cameras I already own that I've owned for a long time. I have two D300s, Nikon D300s. They shoot 12 megapixel. They have a relatively high frame rate for shooting motor drive, faster than the other camera that I use on a more regular basis, which is my D7100, also a Nikon D7100. The thing that's great about the Nikon D7100, it also does video. It's not a mirrorless, it's a digital SLR, mirror comes up, so it's a little more difficult to use to shoot video because you can't see through the viewfinder while you're shooting video. There's also no image stabilization. There's no optical, there's no in-camera, there's no stabilization at all, so you got to use a monopod, or good sturdy monopod, or put it on a tripod. You also don't have the ability to make it easy to configure shutter speed and f-stop to get exactly what you want, which I can do with the Lumix that I use. It's an old G85, a couple of years old. It's not as sophisticated as some of the newer ones. The autofocus sometimes really sucks. Typically when I'm doing this now, I will make sure that everything is in focus. I'll make sure that I'm in focus. I'll tap the screen, set it all up, and then I'll reach over to the lens that I'm using, which is an 8-18, and I'll turn off the autofocus. So the camera can be doing all the autofocus things it wants to try to do, but the lens is turned off, so I can't autofocus with it. Now, not all of my lenses necessarily do that. The kit lens that came with it does not have the capability to turn off the autofocus with a switch. I'd have to turn it off on camera, and I can do that by reaching on the back. There's a switch. I have to kind of remember where it is, and I can look on the screen. I can look over off to where the screen is, to where the fold-out screen is, and I can see that I'm in manual focus. So that works fairly well. But again, this is old technology. It doesn't have the new really crisp autofocus that some of the new cameras have. Even the new Nikon gear, the Z series, the Z6, the Z7, 6 and 7 II, and even the old Z50, which is the APC size camera. It also has much better autofocus. And the software gets upgraded every now and then, and that typically makes it better also. Doesn't compare to the Canon, doesn't compare to the Sony. I can't see changing all my Nikon glass for all of that. It's just a big expenditure. First, I don't have the money. Two is I'm really satisfied with the quality of work I do. I will admit there are some things I can't quite do with some of the equipment that I have because I have some old glass. I don't have the faster, newer glass. I don't have the stuff that's the 1.4 and the 1.8. I do have a couple of those, but they're not the wide angle. I really like the wide angle. This is the widest angle lens that I have for the Lumix. It's the 8-18, and it is a 2.8, and I try to use that as much as I can, but it's a variable f-stop. At 8 millimeters, it's 2.8. When you switch it over to the higher 18 millimeter, it's an f4. So it switches from 2.8 to 4, and that's okay. I can live with that. It's not as good as having 1.4 all the way through. Not as good as having 2.8 all the way through. And again, it would be nice to have an unlimited budget. Wouldn't that be great? Didn't have to worry about money. Have all the dollar bills you'd want. Have all the $100 bills you want. I'll take all the dollar bills. But I don't have a lot of money, so I get along with what I have. And that is sort of what makes me have a good time, because it makes me think more. It makes me work harder to make good pictures with what I have in front of me. That's one of the reasons I really like my iPhone, is because it gives me some capabilities that my cameras don't have. It's my phone and a set of cameras. It's really neat to be able to do that. And well, one day I hope I'd like to be able to do what I did in the old days. When I worked for newspapers, before I worked for the wire service, when I worked for the Orlando paper and I worked for the Fort Lauderdale News, I carried Leicas almost everywhere. Leicas with fixed lenses. First of all, there were no zoom lenses for the Leicas. It was all film. We all had fixed lenses. I typically carried 2 to 3 Leicas. I know, that's really weird, but I did. I had an M4, I had an M2, and I had an M3. And the M3 kept the 50 millimeter Summicron, that was an F2, on it all the time. The M3 viewfinder was a normal lens viewfinder, a 50 millimeter viewfinder. The M3 was really neat because it had a wide angle viewfinder, and it really made things nice because I could put any lens I wanted on it, from the Super Angulon, the 21, all the way up through the 90 and the 135-2.8 that I had. Loved all that glass. Typically, when I got out of the car to go shoot something, that's what I carried, was my Leicas. Not the Nikons, my Nikon Fs. The Nikon Fs had longer glass, had a little bit faster glass. I think the picture I shot that was in the NPPA Pictures of the Year from 1970-something was shot with my Nikon with a 200 millimeter f4. Classic lens. Everybody had a 200 millimeter f4. It was small, it was lightweight, it was all manual focus. This was long before automatic focus. Oh man, autofocus. Remember when that came along? Had another whole story. But all of that was made manual focus. In those days, manual focus had a different throw on the lenses. That is the difference between the infinity focus and the closest focus was a long throw. So you could slowly focus to make sure you get it right. If you look at today's new lenses, the distance from full distance to close-up is a really short throw because the motors have to drive it. The electronics are doing the focus, not the manual focus. If you put some of the newer glass to manual focus, the throw is so short, it's hard to make a really precise focus. The old glass was much better. You could run your hand almost an entire distance around the lens to go from close-up focus to infinity focus. And that made it easier to get the precise focus that you wanted. Can't do that necessarily with today's lenses because they're set for the motors to drive them short distances to get in focus quickly. If the motors had to drive them a long distance, the focus might perhaps, maybe, be more precise in a longer period of time, but it would take a longer period of time for it to get in focus. That's a big difference between the old glass and the new glass. One of the reasons I like the old glass. I still have a bunch of my old glass, and periodically I'll put it on one of the other cameras. Or I have the adapters for the Lumix. I have the adapter to be able to use my old Nikon glass. I have adapters to use old Pentax lenses that I have. Don't use it near as much as I should. Maybe one day I'll start to do that. Some of them are very fast. I have a Pentax 1.8. I have a Pentax f2 50s. I have an 85 1.8 for the Nikon, a 35 1.8 for the Nikon. I have a 20 2.8 for the Nikon, manual focus. May have to put all those to use one day. Maybe I'll do a little thing one day and you can see what they all look like through the APC size, I don't have a normal frame, a full frame camera. Maybe I'll get a full frame camera. Nah, I'm not going to get one for some time. Maybe if I get a Nikon Z one day, maybe if my ship comes in, maybe if someone wants to be a benefactor and buy me a Nikon Z6 with the 24-70 and the adapter to use old lenses, that'd make a nice gift for February 14th. Valentine's Day is coming up. You can get me a Valentine's Day gift. Nikon Z, 24-70. I'd like to have the 2.8. I'll take the 4. And the adapter to use the Nikon F lenses. That'd be good. I'd take that. I'd take more. I'd take more if you want. Not going to happen. It's sick humor. Don't pay attention to that. All right, I think I'm done for the day. Today's been kind of a slow day. The weather was nice this morning. Sun was shining. I went out. Not a lot going on. The guys are back out in the field doing more timber with the horses. I didn't get a lot of good stuff with the horses yesterday. If you want to take a look, I did have a couple of nice black and whites. They were linked in yesterday's video if you want to go back and look at that. There's a black and whites at minimalist.com. That's MNMLST. Dropthevowels.com. I should see dropthevowels.com. I wonder if somebody's got to have dropthevowels.com. If not, you should go register it. I've got minimalist.com. It's for sale if you want to pay me a lot of money. Hey, if you want to buy minimalist, MNMLST.com, and give me enough money, I'd like to buy a Nikon Z2 with the 24 and the adapter. I'd do a trade. You buy that for me, I'll give you MNMLST.com. Yeah, not going to happen, but I'd like that. I also own a couple of other domains that are interesting. I own PHROG, frog.com. That's from an old Peter, Paul, and Mary song, PHROG, frog to me. For those of you who remember Peter, Paul, and Mary. Long story. Back to my youth. Enough of that. All right, I'm out of here. Do all those YouTube things. I want you to subscribe and like, that's a thumbs up, and comment and share. Tell all your friends about me. I want to get more subscribers. Talk about the beard. Going to do all those things. I'll go look and see if this is available. If it is, I'll link down below. I know that this is available. I'll try to link to it and some of the other variations on it. This is made by Jobo. I'm not sure who makes the ones that are readily available now. This white bow, I'll come back to it. And that's it. I'm done. I'll be back in a minute after I get balanced.